Usually when we talk about a deep dive,
Yeah.
we're speaking metaphorically.
Yeah.
We take a topic, we unwrap it, look at the insides. But
Today we are literally digging.
we are grabbing a shovel and breaking ground. We're looking at a stack of sources, articles, historical maps, urban planning critiques, all focused on one very specific, very famous square mile of Earth, the Xinyi district in Taipei.
Right.
Now, for anyone who's been there or even just seen the photos, this is the glossy postcard view of Taiwan.
Yeah.
It's Taipei 101, luxury malls, Michelin restaurants. It's the definition of modern.
It is. It's the face of modern Asian capitalism. It's shiny, it's organized, and it's very, very expensive. I mean, if you search Taipei on Google Images, Xinyi is probably the first thing that pops up.
Exactly. But, and this is the hook that really grabbed me in the research, there's this term that urban historians use for this place. They don't call it a financial center.
No.
They call it a time fault aggregate.
It's timefall. It sounds like something out of a geology textbook or, I don't know, a sci-fi novel, doesn't it?
It really does. Like a glitch in the matrix. And the whole premise is that what looks like a flat modern grid is actually a vertical stack of 5 completely different historical eras. And the crazy part, they are all occupying the same space at the same time.
That's the key here. Usually, when a city modernizes it, it wipes the slate clean. You bulldoze the old, you build the new.
Sure.
But in Xinyi, because the development happened so fast, really just in the last 40 years, the layers didn't get fully erased. They got compressed. So you have agriculture, military history, industry, and ultra-modern finance all just pushing against each other, like tectonic plates.
So our mission today is to act as archaeologists.
Right.
We're going to peel back the asphalt and the glass to see the invisible city underneath. And I want to start at the very, very bottom. Before this was a financial capital, what are we even standing on?
You're standing in a swamp.
A swamp. That is a very different vibe from the Louis Vuitton flagship store.
A very different vibe. If you go back to the indigenous Ketigalan era, this area was called Shiku, which translates roughly to the mouth of the stream. It was a wetland. It wasn't about land value. It was about survival hunting, fishing, farming along the Keelung River.
It's just so hard to reconcile that image with the concrete jungle there now.
Hmm.
But the sources mention this wetness is still a defining feature, specifically with what they call Layer 1, the buried water network.
Right. This is where the engineering story begins. We need to talk about the Liu-Gong Canal.
I see this name, Liu-Gong Canal, everywhere in the history books on Taipei. But I think most people, myself included, just assume it was like a little irrigation ditch.
It was so much more than a ditch. That's like calling a highway a footpath. This was a massive, century-long hydraulic engineering project starting way, way back in 1739.
Wow.
Yeah, and you have to understand the context. Bringing water from this Indian River to these fields was a logistical nightmare. A man named Guo Yilu and his sons spent decades basically terraforming the basin.
So this wasn't just digging a hole. This was managing flow and gravity over miles, turning a swamp into a breadbasket.
Precisely. And by 1910, this system had become so complex, it absorbed another canal system and connected 8 distinct ponds. I mean, think of them as small lakes that dotted the landscape right where the department stores are now.
8 lakes in the middle of downtown.
Yes, it was a water-based society. Rice paddies need a ton of irrigation. But here is the time fault moment. When the modern planners arrived, they had a problem. Waterways curve, they're organic, they meander.
And modern cars do not meander.
Exactly. Modern grids need straight lines. So they didn't just drain the swamps, they buried the infrastructure. The report calls it a disappearing civilization. So if you are stuck in traffic on Xinyi Road or Keeling Road today, you are likely driving directly on top of these old canal routes.
That's a haunting image. The ghost of a river dictating the traffic jam.
It is, and for anyone listening who wants to actually see this layer, you can't really do it in the district itself, but you can find the source.
Yeah.
There's a hidden spot called the Intake Stone Tunnel at 65 Zindian Road upstream.
What am I looking for there?
You're looking for the stone carving. It shows you the brute force and precision it took to divert a river in the 1700s. It grounds you in the reality that this entire financial district is built on a foundation of water management.
And what if I'm just walking around the mall district? Can I see it there?
Not directly, but you can play a little game. I call it water trace mapping. Look for the streets or alleys that curve unexpectedly. In a grid system, a curve is a mistake.
Unless it's following something older than the grid.
Exactly. Those curves are the banks of the Ghost River.
I love that. It turns a walk into a treasure hunt. Okay, so we dry out the land, we pave over the canals. What comes next?
Layer 2. the military enclave.
This is the post-World War II era, right? The big shift.
Correct. Late 1940s, the nationalist government retreats to Taiwan. They bring nearly 2 million people with them, soldiers, families. They need housing immediately. And Xinyi became a hub for the military logic of that era.
And this is where we get the 44 Arsenal, which sounds incredibly industrial.
The Combined Logistics Command's 44th Arsenal, it was a weapons factory. But the fascinating part isn't the weapons, it's the housing. The 44 South Village.
I've seen photos of this. It sits right in the shadow of Taipei 101, and frankly, it looks like a shantytown. It doesn't match the neighborhood at all.
Well, originally it essentially was. The term used in the architectural notes is overcoming difficulties. That's a polite way of saying they built these houses out of whatever they could scavenge wood, bamboo, mud.
Because they thought they were going back, right? This was temporary.
That's the psychological tragedy of this layer. These were temporary shelters. They thought, we'll be here a year or two, then we retake the mainland. But they didn't. 1 year became 5, then 10, then 40.
So the temporary shelter becomes a permanent, multi-generational home.
Exactly. And the architecture reflects that weird limbo. And this creates what I think is the most violent visual contrast in the entire city.
The time fault at its peak.
You can stand in the central square of the 44 South Village, which is preserved now, and look at these low, gray, tiled roofs. And looming immediately behind them is the gleaming space-age spire of Taipei 101.
It's jarring. Usually the city bulldozes the slums to build the towers. Why is this one still here?
It was a fight. Preservation wasn't a given. If you look nearby at the Zongtuo public housing that used to be the 44 West Village, it got completely demolished, turned into modern apartments.
So the South Village is a survivor.
It's a survivor. It represents the struggle of those early immigrants standing its ground against global capitalism.
The sources mention a museum inside. Is it worth going into, or is it just another tourist trap?
No, you absolutely should go in. It's the Xinyi Civic Center now. The reason you go is to look at the utensils, the artifacts. It helps you understand the scarcity lifestyle. When you see how they repaired a broken bowl and then you walk 50 meters to a Chanel store, the contrast just hits you in the gut.
Yeah, it makes the luxury next door feel almost obscene.
It creates a dialogue. It forces you to ask, what is the cost of progress?
So we have the water, and we have the soldiers. But Xinyi wasn't just housing. It was a production engine.
Right. Layer 3, the industrial aesthetic.
We're talking about the Songshan Tobacco Factory.
Which is now the Creative Park. If you go there today, it's all hipster coffee shop design exhibitions, art galleries.
Right.
But historically, this place was a beast. It was part of the monopoly system during the Japanese colonial era.
Monopoly system.
Yeah.
Does that just mean no competition?
It means the state is the only player. The government controlled tobacco, alcohol, camphor. This factory, built in the late 1930s, wasn't private enterprise. It was an arm of the state. It covers 6.6 hectares.
That's a massive chunk of land in downtown Taipei.
Huge. And the architecture is totally different. It's functionalist modernism, precise lines, high ceilings. It projects power and order.
It feels very solid, unlike the bamboo shacks of the 44 South Village.
It was. And the interesting pivot here is the transition from a manufacturing economy to a creative economy. The walls are the same, but instead of pumping out millions of cigarettes, it's pumping out graphic design and cultural capital.
It's the ultimate symbol of Taiwan's economic evolution, from making stuff to thinking stuff.
Exactly. But there are still traces of the old beast. The expert tip here is to ignore the art for a second and look for the boiler room and the chimney.
I mean, the chimney is hard to miss. It towers over the park.
True, but look closer at the boiler room details. The valves, the structure, that was the power core. But there's a softer side, too. The factory had a bathhouse and a Baroque garden.
A bathhouse.
Yeah.
For the factory workers, that sounds surprisingly human.
It challenges our assumption that these factories were just sweatshops. They were self-contained industrial villages. They cared about hygiene and welfare, partly for efficiency, sure, but it suggests a philosophy where the worker was part of a machine that needed to be maintained, not just used up.
Okay, so we've gone from rice paddies to barracks to the factory. Now we hit the 1980s. The bulldozers come in, and the planners pull out the big maps. Layer 4, the modern experiment.
This is the birth of the Xinyi planning area. And the key concept you need to grasp here is the axis flip.
The axis flip sounds like a gymnastics move.
In urban planning, it was a huge gamble. Historically, Taipei's center of gravity was the west near the river trade. But the west was crowded, old, and prone to flooding. The government decided to forcefully flip the city's center to the east.
So they didn't just expand, they created a whole new heart.
They took 150 hectares of those old fields and military lands, and they overlaid a rigorous grid. It was an ambitious project to create a Manhattan-style financial core from scratch.
And the crown jewel, obviously, is Taipei 101.
Completed in 2004. Held the world's tallest building title for a while. But it's the symbolism. It's shaped like a bamboo stalk, rising, segment by segment.
Which signifies growth.
Growth and resilience. Bamboo bends but doesn't break. I mean, remember, this is a massive earthquake zone. Building a half-kilometer tall tower here is a challenge to nature. It was Taiwan saying, "We have arrived."
But the research suggests the best way to understand this plan isn't to look up at the tower, but to look at the street level.
Right, at the skywalks. The separation of people and cars. This is the Xinyi style. You can navigate almost the entire district from the subway to the cinema to the mall without ever touching the asphalt.
You float above the traffic. It feels very futuristic, but also a little detached.
It's the ultimate consumer experiment. They remove the friction of crossing the street. It's designed to keep you moving, keep you shopping. It's a very curated, artificial experience.
So where do we go to see the seams of this plan? Where does it get messy?
You have to get above it. The recommendation is Elephant Mountain.
Everyone goes there for the sunset selfie with the tower.
Don't just take the selfie. Look down at the geometry. From that height, you can clearly see where the Xinyi grid just crashes into the organic, messy streets of the older neighborhoods. It looks like a circuit board plugged into a forest.
That's a great visual. It really highlights how artificial the district is. But we're not done. We have one final layer. Layer 5, the stuff that refused to die.
The resilience. Because despite the billions of dollars and the global capital, there are things in the cracks that shouldn't be there.
We're talking about the temples.
Places like the Songshan Temple, these aren't new additions. These are remnants of Layer 1 and Layer 2.
So the skyscrapers literally went up around them.
Literally around them. They represent the stubbornness of local culture. Imagine a developer coming in, offering a fortune for the land, and the community saying, "No, this is where the gods live."
It's a power move.
It is. It's the power of the people versus the power of capital, and visually, it's stunning. You're standing there, smelling the incense, and reflected in the temple roof is a glass curtain wall of a bank.
It really grounds the whole experience. It reminds you that people lived here long before the stock market arrived.
And the sources suggest one final connection to tie it all together. Go back to the Keelung River waterfront.
Back to the Jakku Ferry location.
Yes. Stand there. You're reconnecting with the biological function that started everything. You see the water, you feel the wind. You realize that despite all the concrete, the geography hasn't changed.
We just built a very heavy shell on top of it.
Exactly.
So when we step back and look at these 5 layers, the water, the military, the factory, the financial hub, and the temples, what is the big takeaway?
The takeaway is that Xinyi isn't just a shopping district. It is a space of power. But the definition of power keeps changing.
Walk me through that.
Well, think about it. In the 1700s, power was water rights. If you controlled the canal, you controlled the food. You were the king.
Right.
In the 1940s and 50s, power was military force. The arsenal, the guns.
Okay.
In the Japanese era, power was the state monopoly, controlling production.
And today?
Today, power is financial capital. Banks, luxury brands, global trade. The ability to consume.
And the temples, where do they fit in that?
The temples represent the power to endure. The power of tradition to just say, "I am still here."
What?
It's the only power that doesn't seem to rely on money or force.
That is a fascinating way to frame a shopping trip. You're not just buying a handbag. You're standing in the tension between these conflicting versions of power.
Precisely. So next time you're walking on those skywalks, look down. Think about the water flowing beneath the pavement. Look at the military shack next to the skyscraper. Feel that time fault.
It raises a pretty heavy question for us today, doesn't it?
It does. If every era buries the previous one to build its version of progress, what are we burying right now?
That's the thought that lingers. In our rush to build the next smart city, what parts of our current culture are we paving over?
Are we creating new time faults that future historians will have to dig up just to understand who we were?
I think we are. And that's why looking at the ground is just as important as looking at the skyline.
There is always something beneath your feet.
Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the hidden layers of Xinyi. We'll catch you on the next one.